Hi, I'm Shiv.
And I'm Chitra.
We are the co hosts of this show, Software People Stories.
We're happy to bring you stories of people associated with software as makers or consumers.
In every episode, we talk to people on their own personal and professional journeys.
Their interests and approach to work and life in a free flowing conversational format. We hope that you will be able to draw your inspiration from their experiences and insights.
These podcasts are made possible by PM Power Consulting, who have helped individuals, teams, and organizations on their delivery excellence journeys.
This episode of the Software People Stories unraveled along several different paths and took surprising turns in ways least anticipated. I'm in conversation with Padmaja Narsipur, founder and CEO of Clearly Blue Digital. This conversation honestly felt more like a chat over a cup of chai. Topics ranged from her love for reading to freelancing to becoming an entrepreneur and the happy, scary ride as the world veers towards artificial intelligence. Happy listening.
Hi Padmaja, it's wonderful to have you on the Software People Stories. Welcome to our show, and I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Hi Chitra, thanks for having me. Lovely to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks. So we start by asking guests to introduce themselves. So how would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay. So I'm Padmaja Narsipur, and I head Clearly Blue Digital, which is a content design studio. So if I were to talk about myself, I suppose I should start, way back when I was a student, and I contemplated whether I should get into humanities or so-called arts, or whether I should get into the sciences. Because honestly, I was more of a Jane Austen type of person than Steve Jobs type of person. But then decided to go into science and did my bachelor's in computer science. Then did a master's in physics, just because there was no master's in computer science around in Bangalore at that time. And then I moved to the US in the 90s and found that, the software industry was booming over there. So I got my master's in computer science there, spent close to a decade working for a tech company in Silicon Valley. And then I came back to India mid-2000s and found myself with 3 kids under the age of 3. So dropped out of the workforce and got into what was my original passion was writing and reading. Lots of reading and a little writing. So got into a lot of technical writing, mainly because it afforded me the flexibility in hours that I wanted. So I spent almost a decade working as a solopreneur or consultant or freelancer, whatever the term is. I worked for a lot of startups. I worked for a lot of very big companies, from Microsoft to SAP to Cisco, all on my own. And 2015, I sort of mentally made the shift, decided that my kids are now old enough for me to spread my wings a little bit. And I started Clearly Blue soon after. So at Clearly Blue, we like to call ourselves content people, but the definition of content has expanded hugely nowadays. It's not just about written content. It's also about visual content, about oral content, about a lot of UX and UI. So we have a team of very talented people who are working in all these spaces. We also work with our customers on content strategy, marketing strategy. We help them with their marketing campaigns, content publishing campaigns. So it really covers the gamut of work when it comes to communication. And learning content is a huge part of what we do also.
That's nice. It's so interesting, Padmaja. You had it almost seems like all colors of the rainbow as part of your career.
Yeah. It's been, I look back on it and much of it wasn't planned, but every step of it has been very interesting.
You said you took a break and you got back. and then you freelanced for some time.
Right.
So how was that whole transition like, or what was that experience like? And are there a couple of things that you can share with people if you were to look back on that time?
This is a phase that most women go through, motherhood. And for me, frankly, I think it was the first time in my life that I confronted the fact that I'm a woman. Basically, because I went from college to work, and I'd never taken a single day off. So then, there were these little beings totally dependent on me, mainly for nutrition and sustenance. But I think it's a phase that most men don't go through because, suddenly you're confronted with this break in your career. You're not really using your brains. And the little ones are too little for you to actually have conversations with them or anything as such. So it is, very frankly, it's drudgery and it's very lonely. Being a mother, sitting at home with little children. And that period was quite traumatic for me, actually. We had also moved back to India. So I had been away for over a decade and moved to a new city in India, which we moved to Hyderabad. And everything was new for me. So I would say that although I really enjoyed the time with my kids, I was looking for some sort of outlet where I could use my brains. And the fact that the internet afforded me a freelance career came as a lifesaver.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice to know. And, I always find these kind of experiences interesting because each one has a unique story behind them. And I think the more we can tell such stories, it becomes encouraging for other people, and in particular women who are listening to it, to actually take courage that all is not lost. Despite the drudgery, the loneliness, and the newness, something will come out of it. So what was freelancing work like for you?
So the freedom that freelancing affords is that you can set your own pace and your own schedule. Although once you get going, it's sort of being on a hamster wheel because work keeps flooding in, and so you have to basically make a choice, whether you want to work 5 hours a day or 2 hours a day. So freelancing, I think, is a lot of self-management, time management, I would say, where you say that, okay, I'm only going to do this much and no more. You don't want to go the other extreme where, you do have real responsibilities at home. So you want to be able to balance that. And the pluses of freelancing are there is no commute. I worked out of my bedroom for a decade. I worked with people in Germany. I worked with people in the US. I worked with a few folks in Korea, all sitting out of my bedroom. You can do world-class work now. So basically, I think those are the two key things. Managing your own time, being very responsible and professional, adhering to the deadlines, and also enjoying the flexibility.
Nice. Thank you. So if I were to ask you a question about technical writing, what is it that makes for good technical writing? How can people make a career out of it?
You may not like many of my responses, but
that's okay.
So when I was a techie at Intel, inevitably our team would have a technical writer with whom I would somehow end up working closely. Mainly because when you are in an engineering team, the communication or the documentation part of it is not given much importance by the techies. They'd rather fob it off on the technical writer. But I totally enjoyed that aspect. And so when I got into freelancing, I found that doing technical writing was quite easy for me because I could read code, for example, which many people cannot if you're not a techie. So technical writing as such, started off with when you are in freelance mode, not many big companies will trust you with their core engineering documentation or anything like that. So it started off with writing product manuals, user manuals, things like that. And then once you gain that trust, they are able to share more, confidential documentation so that you can work on technical writing. So I know that the technical writing industry has a lot of standards, tools, robo help, or this, that, and the other. But at the core of it, I think it should be the technical writer should be a person who understands technology very well, maybe even down to the code level, or at least be able to understand the low-level design documentation, and then also understand the user very well. Because oftentimes, especially in B2C scenarios, the end user may not be a technical person at all. You might be designing a phone for senior citizens, for example. So be putting yourself in the user's shoes and then bridging that gap between what the engineering team wants to put out and what the user actually wants is at the core of what the technical writer should do.
Are there any examples? I liked what you said, keeping the user in mind. We do a lot of design thinking and helping people think through from the customer's perspective in mind. Are there any examples that you can share about how you applied some of those to your technical writing?
I would have to think about this actually. There are tons of examples. I mean, if I could cite a recent example, through Clearly Blue with my team, we worked on a website for a cybersecurity firm. So this was not technical writing as such, but this was, what should I say, it's probably techno-marketing kind of writing. Basically creating the digital presence of a cybersecurity product company, which is a highly complex, highly technical kind of material for industries like banking and finance, for healthcare, for retail. These are all at the CXO level. But still, you have to put yourself in the user's shoes. Because when you're looking at it, let's say you're looking at it from the point of view of CISO or a CIO of a bank, you're not really interested about what goes on under the hoods. What you're interested is in how the product can help you, how it can make your job easier. That is number one. And number two, the CISO or CIO's experience with the product or all the product collateral should be so seamless and user-friendly that they should be able to make that shift from being a stranger to actually a customer of the product. So this was something I think we achieved quite well. It took a lot of intensive back and forth between us, between our customer who was the cybersecurity firm, their CEO and their top management, as well as understanding the space where they operate and understanding what their users do.
So in some ways, blending the mind of the user with how the product is likely to be used by that user. So it has to make sense for both the company as well as the product company as well as the user, right?
Correct. So although our customer in this case was the cybersecurity firm, we really had to put ourselves in the mind space of their customer to understand how they will interact with their website, and also we built product collateral for them. So how they interact with their product, the dashboards and things like that, then make the design.
I definitely see us having more conversations around these stories, especially very curious to understand how a bank security officer would actually relate to this kind of content and collateral. And would that perhaps translate to business for the security company? And if they choose to adopt, what their journey looks like in the future.
Yes. Right.
So definitely looking forward to more of those kind of conversations. So, now you started Clearly Blue. How did that all come together? Why did you choose the space of digital content and digital media? And why and how did all of this come together?
Just harking back to my journey, like I said, 2015 or so, I decided that it's time to sort of spread my wings, and we moved back to Bangalore as a family. And I always had harbored this notion at the back of my mind that I would get back into corporate because that was an area I was familiar with. And once I came back to Bangalore, started interviewing, reviving my old networks and so on. And I joined a company over here. But somehow the experience didn't go well. Maybe it was the fact that I had been a freelancer for far too long. I was used to dictating my own hours. And also there was an element of conservatism in the firm I worked with, where clock watching was a habit over there, which didn't gel well with me. So I sort of made an impulsive decision and turned in my resignation within three weeks, I think, of joining, and decided that I will create my own space where I can exist. And also, at that time, I had interacted with quite a few other women who had been in the same situation as me, very qualified, experienced professionals who had taken a career break for various reasons and wanted to, they were all looking for a workplace where they could flex. We in Clearly Blue, we provide that opportunity, or I would even not like to call it an opportunity. I think it should be the norm anywhere. It is in many companies, but sadly it's not in many companies. We have people who leave at like 3 in the afternoon. And that is completely fine with us, mainly because these people are so passionate about the work they do that they log in after the child sleeps at 9. Today I was talking to somebody who finished her, whatever, we have a project where content has to be sent in every day. This is for a B2B portal. She finished her quota at 6:45 in the morning and she's come in and she's working on something else right now. So these people know what they're doing, they're able to manage their own time, they just are hungry for good work. So I wanted to create a workplace like that for myself and for others. And it's a journey, but I think we are getting there.
Nice, very interesting. So, how important is it for people to have a digital presence today? This question may sound a little cliched in the world. But what I've seen is many people say that they want a digital presence, and it somehow stops with the perception of, hey, I have this website, and yes, we have a website. And especially the traditional businesses really are not thinking beyond, or perhaps don't know how to think beyond. So how would you engage with companies like that, that want to have a digital presence, and what does that look like?
I would say a website is just hygiene. You have to do more than that, especially if you are a business, whether you're B2C or B2B. Mainly because if you look at information as an asset, the paradigm has shifted such that information which used to be in the hands of businesses is now in the hands of consumers. So if somebody is going to approach you, they will have already, I think the latest statistic is 60% of buyers will have made the buy decision before they approach the salesperson. So having a digital presence is essential, and a website is just hygiene. So I have spoken to, we have almost all our customers are in the B2B space. I've spoken to B2B CEOs who are like, why do we need a social presence? Why do we need to be on social media? Well, because whoever you're talking to, even if they are the CXOs, are going to check you out. They're going to look at what your LinkedIn says. Do you have a company page? Things like that. Even before they approach you, even before they make the first call or the first reach out. So that is the essence of it.
Yeah, so in some sense, it's customers influencing the business, and the business trying to influence the customers. So as a digital partner to the companies that you work with, how is it that you kind of enable both sides to, let's say, dance a little better with each other, so that there's a win-win situation created on both sides?
Sure. One important thing that we try to convey to our customers is that when you have a digital presence, it is not a transactional thing. It's not a matter of garnering likes or shares or things like that. That is just not the thing you should aim for. Because when you're looking at it from the consumer side, the consumer has so much power in their hands. They will look all over the place. It's if you have a LinkedIn page with like 20,000 likes, but there are negative reviews about you on Glassdoor, for example, it's the whole point is lost. So for a company that is trying to build their digital presence, we help them look through the entire gamut of things. We look at how they're managing communities on, for example, Quora, how you're answering questions, how you can build the personal brand of your spokesperson on Quora, and the website, of course, and social, of course, and also guest posting on different other journals and blogs, all the different other places where people from your particular sector live. So it's layers upon layers upon layers, and you may think it's never enough, but you also need to be sharply focused. You need not do every different kind of social media that's out there. You need to identify maybe the 2, 3, 4 different channels where your target persona, where those people live, and just work in those. So that's how we help customers on the one side. And as far as their users go, it's really again about the user experience. Because so many products, being all SaaS products nowadays, there are so many various different touch points where users can learn about your product. Like I was saying, product reviews, for example, or their interaction with the product itself on the website. We even work with companies where we design their dashboards for them. These are the dashboards that their users will interact with on a day-to-day basis. It needs to be just enough for them to make decisions. You should not overwhelm the user with a lot of information on the dashboards. So defining the user experience is one part of it, and defining the channels and monitoring and moderating the conversations for our customers is the other part of it.
Where does AI play into all of this? Do you have a perspective on that? The way you interact with a company or a product or an offering or a solution is slowly beginning to change. More often than not, even I find myself chatting with a bot.
Right.
So where is this headed to, and what do you think about it?
Well, if you watch the movies, it's scary. But, like you said, it's so deeply embedded already, we don't realize it. I mean, I quite enjoy the fact that Google finishes my conversations for me when I'm typing out emails.
On the contrary, I find that so intrusive that I almost forget to hit the tap button and I'll just wipe out the whole thing and say what I want to say. So,
I actually like it, because so many of my emails are like, okay, I'll take a look at it or note it or whatever. And especially on my phone, when it suggests a response, I can just swipe on the screen and accept that response. I really appreciate it. But then when you take a step back and think about it, there's this thing sitting on some server somewhere which is listening to all my conversations and actually helping me craft responses, which is so scary. And, there is a line which I think we have already crossed because like you said, we interact so much with bots. I just have my Mac on and I'm having a conversation with somebody and suddenly Siri pops up and responds to something. It might not be relevant, but it's listening, right? So the way this is going is totally scary. I don't have a read on the tea leaves yet, but I am in for the ride right now. So we do have a chatbot on our website. We are building sites, we are building things where we are integrating bots into everything we do. And voice, as we know it, is becoming a bigger part of everything, whether marketing, podcasts like this, or whether in learning. So voice is going big, and all these devices and bots and AI bits are all driven by voice. So I'm just a disinterested but scared bystander right now.
It almost sounded like you were going with the flow,
Yes,
and trying to make peace with it at the same time, I guess.
Well, I mean, this is an argument I have with my eldest son many times. So we didn't realize it, but if you look back in history, I think the first time somebody created a pen, or the first time a camera was used, or even if you look back and all these devices that we created, maybe they were not aided by electricity at that time. Everything we have done to make our lives easier, they have all been devices where we have transferred a little bit of our intelligence into these devices, right? This is just a natural progression of it. I'm sure, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, probably people will have microchips embedded in their hearts and brains and hands. And I saw one ad, I think, it was on some British kind of channel, where there's There's chips embedded in the index finger and the thumb, and a person is able to have a telephone conversation. You don't need a phone anymore, right? And this is coming, right? So the moment we say this is it and not much, I can just see that I'm becoming my dad, where my dad didn't want to use a cell phone. So for as long as I can, I'm allowed for that. So,
good thing, because you were saying that, and I was thinking it's almost can the Nadi Shastras get encoded, and then these devices which are on the tips of your fingers actually transfer all this information to your doctor or your physician. In some sense, the possibilities are endless. And scary.
And scary, So I think from wearables, we are now going into embeddables, right? And the world is your oyster, I think, when you become an embeddable. Imagine if China embeds, because I recently read one article about how all Huawei software and devices are now suspect because stuff is being sent back to Mother China or something like that. Imagine if China embeds stuff in the Prime Minister's, thumb or something like that. It really can happen.
You're looking at so many kind of different worlds itself. Or our world as we know it
is changing.
Maybe completely different. In a few years. Right. What are some of your likes and hobbies that actually keep you going?
So there is a scary part in this also. I was a voracious reader. I think I set an all-time record sometime when I was in high school or college where I read 22 books in one day. I used to read a lot. I was subscribed to I think 4 libraries at one time, and everybody who knew me would give me books. I went through phases. I went through a phase where I used to read only classics. I used to devour everything in City Central Library. Then I went through a Mills and Boon phase. I went through an Alistair MacLean phase. A lot of fiction and stuff. And that sort of, as the years passed, I was reading a lot of non-fiction. So reading has always been a habit of mine. But now comes the scary part is that in the last few years, the reading has gone for a toss. Mainly, I think, Clearly Blue exists. It is my 4th child. But the day has become so bad in terms of schedules and the devices and the distractions and the social media that now I do try to read on my phone. But over the last 6 months, I have consciously cut down my social media to only one per day, which is Twitter. I still like the Twitter jungle, but I have almost cut myself off from Facebook, and LinkedIn I do for professional reasons. And I've gone back to paper books. I find that reading paper books is calming, and I'm trying to get back into that habit of immersive reading. So reading is a great joy for me. Besides that, I love to travel, and travel and reading, I think, are the 2 big things.
Nice. I wish I see a lot of people, I think, going back to these kind of time tested and tried, and in some sense, on whatever I heard in our conversation today, navigating through all the chaos, navigating through the rate of change,
right?
And sometimes it's a good thing to take a step back and go back to what you're doing and feeling that sense of calm.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of books I read nowadays are centered around this. I think there comes a phase in your life where you start looking inwards, and I've been looking at things about how to make myself. It's not like self-improvement in the sense of how to make friends and not antagonize people. It's more in the sense of how to do deep work, for example. So I read I think Cal Newport's book on deep work, and I've been reading Neer Ayal, who's this big designer about he talks a lot about habit forming products and how people get you hooked on all these different social media, with all the fancy icons which look like Las Vegas, all those, what do you call them, carousels and things like that. So I've been, and he also advises you on how you can do deep work, how you can shut off all these distractions and actually focus on things. Because I think we get so hooked to all this media and technology and get so distracted that if you look back on the last 6 months and look at it, what did you really achieve? Multitasking is not really good for us it's actually an impediment for achievement, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm trying to get better at it.
In fact, this goes back to something that you said earlier in the conversation, which is about being self-managed.
Mm-hmm.
So, in some sense, I think looking inward and doing deep work is also part of your self-management. And I'm wondering, you're working in the digital world, you're offering solutions to several kinds of people there, and there's so much chaos in the digital world. So, how do you think this whole thing can be sort of managed better? Staying on top of things, almost moving with the times, when so many things in the digital world are changing almost overnight. Where does this all, in your view, come together?
I wish I had a ready answer. I think I'm in the same boat as probably millions of people around the world. I think the start is first to acknowledge that we do have this information overload and chaos, and it affects all of us, including our children. All of us. Probably the children more than us. It's very disheartening to see kids who have not read. Because reading is, according to me, it really opens up the windows of your imagination. If everything is served up to you visually in a movie, where is the scope for your imagination to take, right? At the same time, we can't isolate people and put them on islands where there's no technology, because it's there everywhere now. So, like you said, finding that balance is the tricky part. So I can only speak for myself as to what has worked. Like I said, I shut off some of my social media because I think Facebook, for example, I really enjoyed Facebook for a few years. But now it's become a thing like, where you go and, okay, I'm sitting here in my office, typing away, somebody's in Bali or whatever. It makes you more depressed than happy. Although it's a great way to connect, I acknowledge. So I think limiting your social media in terms of what channels you want to live on and what you don't want to live on, which is very true for businesses also, because every business does not need to be on every social media channel. You don't want to be on Facebook if you're a B2B, or maybe have a minimal kind of presence. So that is the first step. And also, I think also to see, like I said, with regard to self-management, for example. So businesses need to have like a proper strategy about where they're going and choose the channels, choose the messaging, be very sharp about all this and execute. I think that is the way to go. I don't think I answered your question properly.
Yeah, I think this is a fair enough start. And while you were actually talking, I was thinking that we will promote conversation.
Okay.
We'll probably stitch together a story or a series of podcasts around making sense of the chaos of the digital world.
Yeah. I think every business is trying to make sense of it and see what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And in the process, many businesses actually lose a lot of money trying to sock money on getting those likes and comments and shares. Whereas they should probably be spending more time listening to their customers, see what customers are saying on different communities, and then channel all that feedback back into their product teams and improve the user experience, improve the products. So there's a way to do it and it may not cost a lot of money actually.
So one question that's coming in my mind as you were saying this, you became an entrepreneur. Are there things that you'd like to share with perhaps people who, amidst our listeners, aspire to be entrepreneurs or just want to listen to an entrepreneur share their story? Anything that you would like to shed light on?
Oh, plenty. So, first off, actually, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad was one, his dad was one too, both in different spaces. And then my husband is an entrepreneur, my brother is an entrepreneur.
Wow.
So it was almost, and my father-in-law too. So it's almost, I suppose, inevitable because I see people all around me in my family leading life on their own terms. That's not to say that entrepreneurship is some glorious kind of thing. It's actually very, very hard. It's a lot of uncertainty. And I think the biggest thing about being an entrepreneur is the self-doubt because ultimately everybody is looking at you for answers. You may not always have answers. And what you plan and what you execute may not always work. So it's owning up to, that responsibility and having to, at the end of the day, when the first of the month comes, there are so many people you need to pay salaries to. So there is a huge responsibility that comes with entrepreneurship. That being said, I have enjoyed the ride so far, including all my tussles with financial management and all that. I was a big zero with finance before. I would say I'm probably a 1 on a scale of 0 to 100 right now, but I'm learning. And the biggest thing is because we have set ourselves such a broad canvas to work with, we are doing so many things. For example, we are working on a project right now where we are actually building software, a visualization piece for another data-driven product. So we are doing a lot of 3D modeling, we're working with programmers. So at the other end of the spectrum, we are creating content for a portal for doctors. So we have set ourselves a very broad canvas. We are working with different sets of people, all centered around this core concept of content. So the kind of freedom I have here at Clearly Blue, I probably would never get if I worked outside for somebody else. And yes, I mean, I do wish I could make more money. I may in the future, but for now, I'm like totally enjoying the ride for what it is.
Nice, Padmaja. I hope some of our listeners actually take away something from this and are inspired and hopeful. Is there any last things that you would like to leave listeners with?
So there's so many different facets to who I am and what I do, and I think that's true of almost all of us. So for me, actually, beyond being an entrepreneur or beyond being a techie or an ex-techie maybe, because I don't hold right now, I think the fact that I'm a mom is the most important thing for me. So I went to a workshop where they asked us all to stand up and talk about what is the one thing that you're most proud of. So I talked about my kids, which actually startled quite a few people. So I think for all of us women who are, professionals also, so I think this is a great time to exist. This is a great time to be where we are coming into our own, the workspace, the workplaces, the marketplace is more conducive to women entrepreneurs, women leaders, women professionals. And we have to still mold ourselves to the way men work, but it is getting easier. So I'm very hopeful of the future for women, for professionals, for the industry, for India. So I'm very happy and hopeful.
That's a nice way to end this conversation. So thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you, and I'm looking forward to many, many.
Thank you. Thanks, Chitra. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you.
If you like the show and would like to share your experiences with the community or know someone else who might want to do that, please get in touch with us at podcast@pm-powerconsulting.com. That is podcast@pm-powerconsulting.com.
Please rate this show on Podchaser, Stitcher, iTunes, or any other podcast client that you find us on. Please also share our episodes with your friends and others in your network. If you or anyone you know would like to be featured on our show, do write to us at this email address: podcast@pm-powerconsulting.com.